Welcome to Safari Yangu Podcast, where we share our stories unapologetically, experiences that shaped us and experiences that continue to shape us. I'm your host, Miss Kimaru, and on today's episode, we are focusing on the segment Lessons from My Life, and I hope I can actually bring a guest soon to share a lesson from their life. And today's lesson, I'll be sharing a lesson that I have learned, and that is occupying space and being seen, especially as a woman at the workplace. I hope you can take a lesson or two from this. A few years back, let's just say in 2019, media, my friend and I started a company. He's a guy, and we owned this company, or we have owned this company 50%. And so when we started this company, this person was not there to implement. So as a person who was around, I took the mantle to actually go implement it in Kakamega. And I spent the next 6 years implementing the company. And what we were doing was skills training. We were providing skills training from beadworking, coding, web design, doing lots of amazing artwork, and teaching kids digital literacy. Very interesting concept, and it has actually worked. So as I said, my business partner was not around, so I was the one who was supposed to implement it. And I remember at this time I was at the height of my freelance career. So I packed my bags and moved to Kakamega, all the way from Nakuru to Kakamega. And I moved along with my siblings so that we could go and get started on this particular venture that seemed quite interesting to start with. I was so excited because, and I'll talk about this in another episode, when I was in campus, I learned how to do beadworking, and I used to make money on the side as a side hustle, and it was super interesting. And that's how I ended up starting a company that now was focused on skills training, because I do believe that sometimes what you are taught in school, the gaps in the market, there's lots of gaps that the school curriculum doesn't fill, and lots of there's lots of opportunities that people can actually take up, and especially in this digital and gig economy. Yeah, that was the background of why we actually started Latitude Zero Opportunities. So when we started the company, as I said, I moved to Kakamega. It's a social company. I moved to Kakamega. We're working with this nonprofit. I get settled there, and we start training. And so this nonprofit had a home where they were hosting kids and teenagers and stuff like that. So they were in a particular one space, and we were doing this training. So we started training them. The kids were eager. They were eager to learn. It was interesting. But implementing this project, seeing that it was our first time trying to do a project like this on such a scale. Initially, we had been doing voluntary work. Like we had a space in Nakuru where we were teaching people digital skills on a very small scale. For me, also in the past, I've volunteered to do some of these skills training, even when I was in campus and stuff like that. So going to Kakamega, it seemed like such a huge task, and I had never run a company where I'm even employing people. So I moved here. I'm feeling like, I got this. I can conquer the world. And when we started implementing this particular project, I kind of, the way the Kenyan system is ingrained in our heads, like we're supposed to follow a particular path. I feel like when we got there, that was what was also supposed to happen. So it was kind of a bit hard to bring everyone involved on board in a way that would show them that, this is, and people who have implemented projects, they can actually relate. It was hard to convince everyone or to bring them on board to show them why it's important for a kid who is probably in class 2 or class 1, why they should even start learning digital literacy. You feel me? Yeah, so it took a while. And I remember the first few months, because we started in June of that year, and I'm grateful for this experience actually. So the first few months, it was such a struggle. You're thinking, for me, and also for a while, I have been this person when I'm passionate about something, I want to see it through. So for a while, I'm trying to show these kids, this is very important. This is why you should do it. And on the other hand, there's kids who don't even see why it's important. They don't see why we should actually do it. There was a bit of resistance from the participants and also from some of the people on the ground, because I think at that point, it had not necessarily clocked in routine why we are actually necessarily doing these. I remember I strained a lot. I stressed and stressed and stressed and stressed. And by the end of that year, I remember we had now a meeting with our stakeholders. As I said, I appreciate this opportunity. We had a meeting with our stakeholders, and as we are sat in that meeting, so we had the people who fund the home. They come from abroad, and then of course there's the local management. So everyone was there. All the stakeholders involved, they were there, and we were having this very difficult meeting. In this meeting, it felt like I was being accused of something. I can't remember the exact things, but it felt like it was me versus the manager who was locally in that place. And I do appreciate the manager. We are cool friends. We've worked together for so long, but this is just an experience that happened at the very beginning, and I feel like it's very important. So we are seated in that meeting, and it's felt like it's me versus the manager, and everyone is trying to justify themselves. And at that point, I'm seated in that meeting feeling like I am running out of breath, sort of explaining myself or justifying my actions or why I was doing this and that, So it was so hard for me. And I remember even as when we started implementing this project, the kids we were working with, or the people I was working with, they kept referencing my business partner who was not living around there, but they knew the business partner. So they kept referencing this person as if they are the ones who owned the business. And so for me, it looked like I was just like a mere employee, and I didn't take my time to like tell people or correct people like, hey, by the way, I actually own this business, or this is actually my staff too. So this went on and on and on. And by the end of that year, when we were having this meeting, I would call it an accountability meeting, and there was a bit of tension now between me and the manager. It kind of felt like, damn, I am out of breath. This is the best thing that will ever happen to these children. This is the best thing that their donors have tried to implement for them. So I was feeling like, why am I seated here feeling like I am running out of breath, explaining myself? So after that meeting is when it first occurred to me the importance of occupying space, being authentic to yourself, and letting people know, like, whatever journey it is that you're going through, you have to show people that, like, don't diminish yourself. For me, I think for the longest, before even I had started the business, I had learned to minimize myself so that I could accommodate other people, and also to minimize myself as if in the context of, you see, the way unambiwa growing up, we were being told like, oh, humble yourself, sijui, let your work speak for itself, sijui nini. So we grow up thinking that if I talk about myself in a certain way, or if I tell people this is what I do or whatever, that is being braggadocio. But honestly, for the first time in my life, I felt like, oh my God, if from the very word go, I had already told everyone that this is my company and I am not an employee here, this is how we are going to do this thing, it would have been a lot easier for me. And also, I think the tension between me and the manager, I kind of feel like at some point, which are some of the processes I ended up sort of improving on, was also the fact that at some point it's like, he's not the one who has employed you, you've been employed by other people, so you maybe skip him and go to the rest of the people. So I learned that also when you're working in such a scenario, making sure that everyone is involved, especially from a very local level, involving them in your day-to-day is very important. Like, inform them, this is how we are going to do this is how we are going to implement. Because for me, I was looking at it from a very high level. So I am giving my reports, my everything on a highest level, and maybe I am not passing them through him. And that, I think, also is what sort of created tension at the very beginning. So, but as I said, I I had learned to minimize myself. I had learned to not stand up for myself, to say, this is what's up, this is what I stand for, and in my head, I kind of thought that my work will speak for itself. Why do I need to justify myself? Why do I need to do this? Yes, so that went on and on until I learned that particular lesson on that particular day. As women, we struggle in finding our voices, especially at the workplace. And sometimes you have the coolest of ideas and we're in meetings and there's this very loud employee at the workplace, and it could be a man or a woman. So sometimes you feel intimidated and you don't say what's up. And sometimes you have the right answers, you have the right implementation. I've also been in spaces where, apart from that experience actually, I have been in another space where we are in meetings. I have explained something and it was a good explanation of what needs to be done. And then somebody else comes to sort of explain it in other words. And I'm like, So to a large extent, there was times I never used to ask questions, but now even currently I'm still unlearning. And I'm like, if I feel like somebody is trying to, diminish my contribution, I stand up for myself and I let people know that, hey, but as I said, even right now, I'm still learning how to occupy space, especially, and I would love to know, how do men learn this occupying space in such a way? Does it come naturally, or what happens? Yes, and so throughout the lifetime of the business, I feel like for the longest, I didn't necessarily occupy space as a co-founder of this particular business, in as much as that was one experience, but I didn't occupy space in that way, because I feel like there are some people, if you ask them who owns the business, maybe even up to date, they might think it's the guy who owns the business alone. Yeah, so, but I was so hands-on, I was implementing, I was doing all these things, I own the business, even like it's registered and I own it 50%. Yeah, so as I said, it's something I'm unlearning and also learning, like to occupy space and to find my voice even when you are in a place where there's too much, kuna makelele mingi from outside, and you feel like, oh my God, what can I do? What can I say right now? In those days, I remember I didn't want to come across as being too assertive or being too much. I minded how people would see me so much. Like, I was a people pleaser to some extent. I wanted to make people comfortable. I didn't want them to feel like, oh my God, this girl, she knows a little bit too much. But at the end of the day, I was actually the one who had almost all the answers. But the fear of being labeled like, she's too much, she's taking up too much space and stuff like that. Yeah, that was me. But I wondered, at some point throughout my journey, I've wondered, why am I shrinking myself? Why am I shrinking myself to like accommodate other people? Why am a candle that burns so bright if you put me on top of a hill? Why is somebody trying to cover that for me, and I'm not speaking up for myself? Or why am I even the one who also does that for myself? Like, I have been ignited, I have all these good ideas, but I'm the one who is also trying to put out my candle. So yeah, don't shrink yourself so that you can accommodate other people. If you are a candle that was meant to shine so bright, be that. Don't change that, Yeah, so as women, especially in professional or leadership spaces, we are often taught to be polite, to fit in, and not to rock the boat. But shrinking yourself doesn't serve you. And also, it doesn't serve your work, it doesn't serve your community, because as I said, you could be having lots of brilliant ideas and how to do things, but because you're there, you're shrinking yourself, then nothing happens. You have to keep telling yourself that I belong here, I can do this, and it's not by chance, but by the things you do and how you do your work and stuff like that. So if you're a listener out here, you need to know that your voice matters, and you don't have to wait for permission to speak up, to share your perspective, because it's very valuable. And if you believe in it, stand by it. Let people know that this is me, and mtanibeba venye na come, you know. And also, presence is power. Like walk into every room knowing that you deserve to be there. It's not also again by chance. You deserve to be there. You don't shrink yourself to make others comfortable. Confidence is not like arrogance. It's alignment with your worth. So walk in confidence. Usiji shrink. And then visibility inspires other people. Have you ever seen the way sometimes like activists take up on a cause and then we are like, damn, they did that, and then we now start feeling like our fire is ignited. Now we feel like we want to stand for a particular cause. Yes, visibility will inspire other people. So you taking up that space might inspire another little boy or another girl out there to also believe in themselves and believe that they can actually do what you are doing, or they can aspire to reach up to your potential. And then the other one is to practice self-advocacy. As I said, I have been in rooms where people wanted to speak for me, or people wanted to think they know what me as Kimaru want. And if I didn't practice to advocate for myself, then I think I would not have been able to occupy the spaces I've been able to occupy in the way I have been. But trust me, this advocacy thing, mpaka sai, I'm still learning. I feel like sometimes the biggest room in this world is a room that opportunity to grow and to learn. Every time I feel like I have gotten there, I realize there's still more bigger rooms that I need to practice to advocate for myself. Even right now, there's spaces I'm struggling to advocate for myself, but I am learning that there is no other life that I have to live. It's either now or now, and I better do it. So even as I go through this life and I learn and unlearn, that my biggest lesson, especially on self-advocacy, is that it's something you have to practice every day. Because utapatana na mse, kesho leo unafikiria you've conquered that fear or whatever of advocating for yourself, and then tomorrow you wake up, you enter into another room, and there's somebody who kind of intimidates you or makes you feel small, and now you shrink yourself to accommodate them. So you see, there's always gonna be, it's a loop. There's always sometimes gonna be that person. So you have to keep showing up authentically. You have to keep doing something about it. Yeah. And so my challenge for you today is simple. Are you occupying space? If you're not, you have to learn to you have to occupy space. You have to make sure you are seen and you're heard. Whether it's at the workplace, at home, in your community, speak up in that meeting. Pitch your video ideas. For example, if you're doing content creation, or network with people, share your stories at an event. The world needs your light and not your silence. And the more you shrink yourself, the more people lose out on the authentic you and how much you would have contributed to either your community, to your family, or even in the spaces that you actually occupy. So for me, as I said, this has been a lesson I am learning, and I'll keep learning. Because as I said, sometimes life throws you curveballs and you have to always learn to navigate through those. Yes, your story matters, your presence matters, and your voice is powerful. Until next time, I'm Miss Kimaru, and that has been Lessons from My Life. Bye.